Everybody, so it's been a while since we made a video last. I want to go ahead and show kind of the content improvements that have been going on with ICBM mod and what we're kind of aiming to do with the project and how things are going to be moving forward. For starters, yes, it's been like 8 months or so since the last video, and the content I did upload, I don't even think was modding related. I think we were doing airsoft stuff, a couple different random videos. Work has been a mess. Thankfully, I'm switching jobs, so I have a little bit more free time, at least for the moment. The plan is to start to stream every single day, somewhere around 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern, which should be about the time I get back home from my new job. And then try to do about 3 to 4 hours. So if you know what my Twitch channel is, which is Twitch TV/Queen of Missiles, you can also join our Discord and actually get notifications on that. There's a self-assignable role you can give to yourself that will notify you every time I go live. In terms of YouTube videos, I'm planning on putting content on here. It's going to be a little slow still. There was never really much of a purpose to uploading a consistent video content, although I'm going to try to figure that one out. At least for the moment, I want to show what we've got implementation-wise. As you've noticed already, what's in front of us, this looks a lot different than probably the ICBM you are familiar with. So the old content had models that have been in the mod for pretty much 10 years. It wouldn't be exactly 10 years. I mean, the mod was made in 2010. Started off with more or less retextured arrows and worked its way into, block models roughly around 2012 and 2013. The artwork kind of got to with early Technique models, and it never evolved. Like there was this thought process that it should stay that way because that's the classic version. I did go through ICBM 2, and we did do with a little bit more higher res but still low poly models from the artist Morton. And those kind of worked. Unfortunately, the art style didn't quite match Minecraft, which threw a lot of people off. And then the project itself, which was ICBM 2, was too difficult to update. So we went back to ICBM Classic, kept maintaining it, and I kept it going, pretty much not making a huge amount of progress. Work is a pain, so doing 60 hours average a week, with weeks going sometimes into 100 hours. And that's of the time I was reporting, not even including the time studying and everything else. So it basically meant the project didn't go forward. Now with the project going forward, we've got changes to the functionality. There was a missile rewrite that happened here a while ago that has been released. That would be like version 4.2. Took a while to get implemented, took a while to rewrite how the missiles function. This doesn't change how the missiles work in essence from the player's perspective. At least the missile rewrite didn't. But it does change how the code behaved. So instead of having an entity missile that had an explosive in it that went off, we now have an entity missile that actually works a little bit closer to how ICBM-2s work. There is a flight logic system that tells the missile how it moves. There is targeting data to tell it where it's going. And then there is the source information, cause information, and a few other bits and pieces that are attached onto the missile. The missile itself being a capability, allowing for more than one missile to exist. And this is a little hard to understand because you're like, wait, there's already a lot of missiles in the mod. Well, there's a lot of items, and there's not even that. There's like one item with a whole bunch of metadata. What was happening is you would spawn an entity. That entity would be the same and would just happen to add an ID to itself that says, I am this explosive ID. And it was one missile that did the explosives, did your cluster missile, did your tracking missile, did the homing missile, did the anti-missile. This is a problem. Basically, anything that wasn't an explosive was still treated as an explosive and made a mess for the code. So reworking that then allowed the missiles to exist as more than one type now. So we have an explosive type, we have an anti-missile type, we eventually will have a cluster type back. Everybody's asking where the clusters are at. They will eventually come back as probably an add-on. I still haven't decided how this is going to work because I don't necessarily want to throw all the content back in the original mod. And this isn't me gouging for like money from Curse, because the reality is ICBM gets like pennies a day, where AI improvements gets dollars a day. There's a huge difference between how some of these mods get downloads. So going with more add-ons for ICBM doesn't generate more income. It actually just makes it easier for you as a user to pick and choose what you want to play with. So if you don't want cluster missiles in a mod pack, you don't install them. If you do, there will be an add-on that will allow you to customize how the cluster missiles behave. Because I don't plan to just add back the cluster and nuclear cluster. I want to add back a way you can pick what missiles come out of the cluster, pick and customize them and kind of do stuff like that. But moving back to this, so we can have more types. which allows better customization. We can also have more different targeting systems. So the target systems are all built into the entity, which meant that it shared basically a type. You had cruise type, you had RPG type, and you had ballistic missile type. This kind of slightly changed how the math and everything worked, but just made a mess for things because it was all in the same file and took a lot to edit and deal with. New version, basically you can instantiate whatever flight type you want. So you can have, in this case, the mod comes by default with dead aim, which just means it's going to fly straight forward until it runs out of fuel. You have direct fire, which is basically the same ideal, it just has a little bit more information. Then you have ballistic, which will actually tell it how to do animation flight up, lock height, detonation height, all that stuff. We'll do all the math with that. You then have the flight type for anti-missile, which will tell it how to follow targets. This also comes into mind with targeting data. So targeting data also comes in two modes. You have the anti-missile, which knows how to find a target, and then you have the basic target data, which is like, I just want to shoot at XYZ. In the future, this could be more types. You have types that go like, hey, fly to this target, and then once you get close, find the first radar and fly towards it. Like, that's something we now can do with the code that we couldn't do previously without making an absolute mess of everything. Same for doing like the flight types. We can now do different kinds of flight mechanics, different kinds of flight systems. And with the note of the flight stuff, a lot of the code for that's been reworked. So it works better, it behaves better, simulation works better. Some of the bugs have been fixed. We're still working through all those. There's better unit testing to ensure that the code will continue to work down the road, because we do plan to jump to the latest version here pretty soon. The ideal is March, but I'm not going to hold exactly to that depending on how life goes. But yeah, with all that explaining how the missile stuff has been changed on that, the other half of this is I started, as soon as I got the missile reg done, I was like, hey, I got to get the graphics updated. Because like, I can't just keep running the same graphics over and over again, especially when jumping to newer versions. Almost all the graphics were .object models. .object models is not what Mojang uses. It's something that Forge gave us the ability to do, and it was a short stopgap to having more complicated models that weren't block type without doing them in code. And it's just been carried forward and kind of made a mess. If you ever looked at the log file, you would see a whole bunch of errors coming from our .objects. It also meant that the models weren't static. So as they rendered every single frame. They re-rendered, recalculated the model, and did all that stuff. Now with it being static, it will only re-render when the chunk re-renders. This is for most of the block machines. The missiles aren't static out yet. I'm going to work on that so that way your base will have a nice frame rate while you're moving around and doing stuff until you launch a missile, at which point then you'll take a normal entity hit for a frame rate. Because that's something that's been worked on with that. And I'm trying to think of so work through all the artwork. Also just kind of wanted to get the style updated. Like, the style has been the same of these old Techni looking models. We had 32 by 32 textures that didn't fit Minecraft, had a ton of different problems. We also had some licensing issues. So even though I am 100% confident Kalklavi got the licensing rights, all the artwork that he put into the project, I have no paper trail to show for that other than, conversation logs I can find here and there, which wasn't good because it means we have the code that's MIT, and then we have the assets that are like, I don't know what license they are. They could be ARR, they could be, Creative Commons, they could be, share alike, they could be whatever. So I wanted to get the artwork updated so we can figure out that licensing, get direct references of who made what, get paper trail copies of that, and ensure that the project can continue well beyond it. Because I can't go lean over somebody and go, hey, you can now make your own custom ICBM version. I actually can't do that with the assets. I can go like, hey, you could copy the code, but you have to remake all the assets. Now I can go, hey, I'm perfectly fine with you now making a clone of ICBM for this other game, because you can just take all my assets and have fun. Or we can go take it somewhere else or do whatever we want to do with it. There's a lot of options with that. But then the main big one, because licensing was only a minor issue, was just making them look nicer. Now there's still some work that needs to be done. Some of the models do need more work, like that one needs more work, that needs some animated textures, small adjustments and changes and so on. But overall, they've got more personality and character to them. They now fit inside Minecraft style. They now are JSON models and editable, which means resource pack makers can come in and do whatever they want with these. They're still limited by Minecraft's insistence that you can be only a 3x3x3 block. I am trying to figure out how to get around that, because I want to be able to make the missiles taller, shorter, do a variety of different things with them. We also have more types, by the way. These are 2 new types. If you haven't noticed, that's colorful, which works like a gas thing, generates colors, and this is smoke, which is great for testing your missile trajectories. So you can hit the ground. I'm using it specifically for that reason, where I can see where it hits without breaking everything. But we can kind of go through the list and kind of show off what the artwork is so far. This is conventional, intentionally designed to look kind of boring because it's an everyday missile you fire. You then have, I believe this is shrapnel. And this should be incendiary. This is conflate, which is basically this is confusion missile. It adds a few potion effects to you, makes you confused, makes it hard for you to do things. We then have gas, anvil. One of these is attractive and one of these is repulsive, and then collar and smoke. We had the other types around here, but I think here they are. So here's tier 2. There's breaching charge. I have forgotten what that one is, and you can kind of tell, like, even though I've made these models, I made all of these missile models. We did it on live stream. We went through this and kind of worked our way through all these different models. The only models I have not made, which are not implemented yet, is the explosive blocks themselves. I actually had paid an artist to take the old 32 and basically just bring them down to 16 by 16s for me while still making them look correct. That's contagious. That's fragmentation, which means, I don't know, I should probably pick these up. So this is sonic. I was tempted to go with the blue on that one, but ended up not. But that's breaching, and this one should be thermobaric. So we got that one. So I'll go through some of the other models and look at them here for you. This is Ender, anti-grav, endothermic, exothermic, EMP, and this is nuclear. Nuclear is a little bit weird. It basically kind of looks like the anti-grav. The idea was to make it look like the atomic science nuclear core. So if you're familiar with that redone models that we went through and implemented on that version, that was the ideal. I'm trying to get these to make sure that that kind of tightly looks combined. We also get animated textures in here, and I'm so proud with how some of these animated textures turned out. Just as proud when it comes to some of these. Like these, I still haven't got them where I like them at, but this is the red matter. We got a nice red matter flow here. I want to spend some more time on the animated because this is basically just lava texture recolored. I want to try to get some sideways swirls moving through this and stuff to kind of give it like a spinning effect. I also kind of want to experiment with the idea of making it look like the Star Trek red matter. If you've ever seen that movie where you have these little bubbles of red matter moving around into a fluid. Even though that's not what this is inspired on, it would be a nice nod and visual. And then here's the antimatter, which just has a little bit of animated texture at the top. I think I need to do a little bit better with that, but getting glass renders to work properly is a bit weird. You'll notice it specifically on these ones right here. They will have a little bit of a weird effect with how the glass renders. But beyond the missile models, you also notice there's no silos and launchers nearby. So the launchers have been reworked. There is no more tiers. The tiers were pointless. People kind of liked them just for nostalgia reasons. I looked at them like, hey, the tier 1 could only do X and Z. It wasn't very good, couldn't lock height. Most people skipped it. Tier 2 wasn't much better. Tier 3 is where everybody went to. It wasn't hard to craft, it wasn't hard to get to. Everybody went to tier 3 and just stayed there. So I was looking at that, I'm like, well, the models aren't great. I don't want to make models to match them. I also didn't like the multi-block, how it worked. The multi-block was very limited, ruined creativity for a player. You could not go and customize how your base looked. You could not customize how your setup was done. You stuck and placed the multi-block, stuck the screen in front of it, stuck the frame behind it, you were done. That's all you got. There were some support for connections, so at least you had the ability to like wire inventory and power anywhere you wanted to, but redstone could only go on the screen, and serious things didn't quite work properly, and so on and so on. Now I went and originally my plan was I was only going to take the launcher, because this is a launcher pad here. I was like, I'm only going to do a really quick edit of doing, a custom frame. That's not a frame. That's the other thing we'll get to. And there's still more work to be done on the model, so you can probably tell they're not fully finished. But I was like, hey, I'm just going to do this. I'm like, I'll make the side panels decorative, and I'll make the launcher go in the middle, and it probably will work. Most people would be happy. And then I was like, oh, well, I need to kind of do a connector block to make it look at least slightly more visually accurate. And then I was like, we need to go and make, the screen look a little bit more to match it. And I was like, well, that's not quite correct either. And I'm like, you know what? We need to get inventory support on it anyways. We need to be able to power it from the sides. We need to do all that stuff anyways. So why not make it a network? And while I'm at it, why not go ahead and fix one of the biggest problems I've always had with the mod, which was the screen had to be in the front. Like, that was a very annoying feature that I always hated but never wanted to go through and fix, because it was something Calculavian implemented, and I was just like, it's your mod, whatever, do what you want to do. And then when it became my mod, I fixed it in ICBM 2, which was to me my remastering of the project, but never carried that feature over to Classic. So now we're back to Classic, and what Classic's going to be moving forward, it's not necessarily going to be a mimicking of the original ICBM. It's going to eventually just be renamed ICBM. So it'll eventually lose that Classic title, and it will just be the ICBM themed Minecraft mod. We'll go down the road and we'll make a higher detailed mod later down that will be closer to ICBM 2, which will probably be like an add-on for space or something like that. But yeah, these are customizable. They do support rotation. So you can rotate them. The red pipe on here is meant to be a fuel pipe. I do want to do some animation with it, so that way it looks like it's actually connecting to things. But you can put the missile in there. It looks pretty good. Has a full 1x1 area in here so that other mod developers can add their own missiles, because that was part of the missile rewrite, is that people can register their own missiles now. So you can add explosive types, you can add your own models, you can make actual new entities that aren't explosive type, like it could be a SpaceX cargo rocket for all you care. There's a lot you can do with this, and this isn't just visual. Like, once I got this working where I could do inventory pass-through, I'm like, hey, I don't like multi-blocks, but I do like dynamic multi-blocks. And for those who are not familiar with dynamic multi-blocks, they often are mistaken for what's called emergent multi-block. Emergent multi-block is the ideal that as you start putting different blocks together that are in themselves not actually multi-blocks, they create multi-block behavior. For example, when you sit here and you make, automation to do like stuff like this, do inventory control, or maybe do multi-stage, smelting, this has now created an emergent multi-block. There are certain setups that work that give a sense of multi-block structure, which are in reality not actually multi-blocks, especially when you build them up and you make them decorative and do all the fun things with them. But then dynamic is like, it knows it's a multi-block, but then it has no requirements on where things go and how things are built. Well, I say that, and the only requirement is, don't block the top of the missile launcher, you'll blow yourself up. But with this one, you can add as many frames as you want. You can go through here and be like, hey, I want more frames up here. I want to stack them up. Maybe I want to have a double wide frame system. Maybe I want to have it on the back. I can do what I want to do in the creative game of my choice, which is, this is what this is meant to be. This is meant to be a creative world that you explore and build in. This is not to be a world where somebody tells you how you have to play. So you can come in here and you can build what you want. And on top of that, it's not just like, oh, I get one launcher and one screen. No, you can build how you want. You can sit here, come over and build a pack of launchers. You can decide, hey, I want to build this random silo system. I want to come in here and I want to put this here. I want to put my screen here. Well, maybe I don't want just one screen. Maybe I want more than one screen. And my reasons could be pretty simple. Maybe my friend wants to run on frequency 5 and I want to run on frequency 6, and we both want to run the same missile launcher system. Maybe I want to do inventory, but maybe I don't want to be so close to my missiles. Maybe I want to go back here and I want to put it in my bunker. So that way it's separated from my launchers, but my launchers still have a clear access to the sky. But then I want to put inventory controls on here, and I can come over here and I can actually do that and do inventory, and it will support any kind of inventory connecting system. It doesn't have to be a very select, hyper-specific mod. It's just like if it supports vanilla inventories, and it'll support modded inventories. It'll auto-load for you. It will put the missiles in there. It'll auto-do checks for you and get things that run. And of course, we still got more work to do with errors, and I still have to redo these horrible UIs. This UI is horrible. I will show you the cruise launcher in a bit, and you'll understand the direction I'm aiming for things. But you can build this. Not only can you build this, there is no real upper limit on how big these can be. And I'd recommend keeping it small. There are still consequences to going big. If you've ever played AE2, you'll understand that the bigger you build something, your network-wise, the more machines you stick in, the more stuff like that, the worse your lag will get. This is no different. The more stuff you stick in here, the harder it does have to work. I have coded it relatively simple. It will connect, it'll handle chunks, it'll do, what it's supposed to do to not, break the game. But it still has to loop over all the launchers to give inventory. It still has to loop over all the launchers to give you power. You can pass power through basically any side. It does support forage energy. I don't plan to support IC2. We might go back and do Buildcraft power at some point, but the ideal is this mod is meant to be paired with something like Mechanism or Thermal Expansion. Even though I'm not a huge fan of either of those mods, I have made sure that at least the two most common mods people are going to use are going to work with this, purely because they work with Forge. So this will work. You can get it powered. You can do launching. Like, you can set this all up. You can attach, a laser detonator to it. You can come over here. And let me set this to a frequency other than 0, just so I don't launch everything behind me. So I can set this to 67. Frequencies can now be integer max. You can go like all the way to, I think, like 2 billion, so you have a higher limit than Yuzu. But you come over here, and you can actually launch those. And they have a nice, beautiful animation. So if you haven't seen the animation form before, they actually do have a nice animation that goes up. They will respect lock height, so you can make sure you don't collide with your walls. And the accuracy is now been modified, so how previously you had to put the support frame behind it? That's not a thing anymore. Accuracy is now based on distance. The further you go, the worse your accuracy gets. And the more missiles you launch, the worse your accuracy gets. This both is a benefit because it increases your spread, which means all your missiles aren't hitting the same spot. But it's also a disadvantage so you don't go and like try to fire 100, because 100 will lag. Like it's actually a thing. Try to be respectful to your servers. If you go be a troll and launch a whole bunch of missiles on my server, you're just going to get banned eventually. It'll happen. I know people who used to run servers with ICBM on it. They would just be like, no, you're not launching 1,000 missiles, and they would just ban your account. They didn't ask twice. It was in their rules. They're like, be respectful of the resources that are shared. The reason why these probably didn't launch is pretty simple. There's actually some min-max targeting checks. There's some other checks that run on here. It will kind of tell you in the launcher. I am planning on putting a lot more information here to kind of explain like, hey, what's going on with this? In this case, it does detect one of these is empty, which I don't think it's empty, but more work has to be done. I just finished some of this code. The launcher code was actually finished a couple days ago, but now they're capability driven, which comes into the next part of what I want to show you. So the other feature which was done today on stream was I wanted to make the cruise launchers not only look better, because that was something we did, I think, yesterday's stream. But for today's stream, I was like, okay, we got them looking good. They function well. I want to take it one step further. I want them to work just like the launcher pads. I want you to be able to connect them to that same exact circuit, feed and power it the same exact way, treat it like it's no different to the higher launch system, because it does two things for me. One, we now can have more launcher types. Before, it was really hard to implement a new launcher type because they all had to extend the same exact block, which required multi-block, required all this other stuff, which was really frustrating and difficult. Now it's throw an ion launcher capability on there, throw a missile holder capability on there, and you have a launcher. You could aim it, fire it, and do whatever. These over here can also be run by the screen. You can have as many you want. I still have to work on connection. This was not originally intended to be this way. I'm going to fix it to make it work this way, so that way the middle block will now render on the top here, and you can use these for decorations. Like they are fair game to whatever you want to do with them. But you can grab these guys, you can aim them, they will aim, and they will fire. This is pretty cool, and I don't plan to stop simply here with this. Right now, they still behave like cruise launchers. They still do exactly what the cruise launchers did. They're just now 2 blocks tall instead of like a 3x3 weird wide thing that kind of worked. Better connections on the sides, a much better UI. Easier to deal with stuff. Here's your coordinates, here's your frequency, nice big pretty button that you actually will press down with it. Glass will go over top of it when you cannot fire it to tell you what it's going. You can hover over it to tell what's going on there. You have power, it actually shows. You have a power slot again that we've lost for a while. Everything is nice and clean and formatted. The other launcher is going to look the same way down the point. But what I also want to do with this down the road, since we got this working, it'll launch, it'll do all that stuff, I want to make them also behave like the pads over there. I want you to be able to do ballistic arcs with them. Previously, they were locked to cruise missiles. They would fire, dead aim forward, and hit whatever they were aiming at. I want them to be able to be used for more. I want you to be able to put angles in them instead of just X, Y, Z. I want you to be able to set long-range targets. I want you to be able to fire horizontally and have it arc up and do all kinds of different things. There's a lot of options we're going to do with this. It might not happen for 112 because that's where we're on right now, but it may happen for future versions like 119, because we're going to try to go to 119, and then I'm going to just go ham on all the content. Like we're going to do as much work as possible. Like we're going to do all the graphics, do all the content, add more types, start doing add-ons, bring back pretty much every project that we had alive for Volts that I should have done back in 2015 but didn't. But we're here now, and we can bring it forward and actually make this, really solid. Really good content, really solid visuals and everything else. And this is, nice visuals. Screen, antenna, actual wires, legs. I would love to put some animation on this too, the recoil when you do things. I would like to do a backblast on the missiles. There's a lot to really play with and, have fun with this. Because this is meant to be a mod that, even though it's PvE driven, or it's PvP driven, I want it to be able to still be used for PvP. I want it to still be used with creative, building. I want it to be able to be used for whatever you as a player use it for. But anyways, that's it. I've covered pretty much everything we're doing with it. If you want to see more of what's going on, you can join the Discord, get those live updates, or you can just, follow the chat channel, see the pictures being posted, or you can come join the stream and, actually watch this stuff be developed in real time and even, make suggestions or, feedback or as you see fit. But anyways, I'll see you all later, and, thank you for watching.